They don't teach you about drowning on dry land in nursing school. But that's what the Spanish flu did, made men drown in their own lungs while lying in a hospital bed, gasping for air that wouldn't come. I watched it happen hundreds of times in the fall of 1918, and I still hear that sound, that terrible wet rattling, when I close my eyes at night. My name is Margaret Ellen Cooper. I was 24 years old when I volunteered for the Army Nurse Corps in early 1918, fresh out of nursing school in Boston, full of patriotic fervor and romantic notions about serving my country. I wanted to help our boys over there, wanted to do my part. They sent me to Camp Devens in Massachusetts first, then to a field hospital outside of Étaples, France by September. I thought I was prepared. I'd trained for this, knew how to dress wounds, assist in surgeries, comfort dying men. The war had been going on for 4 years by then. We knew what to expect. Shrapnel wounds, gas burns, amputations, shell shock. We weren't prepared for what came next. The first cases started appearing in late September. At first, we thought it was just regular flu. Happens every autumn, right? A few soldiers would come down with fever and chills. We'd give them aspirin and liquids, and they'd recover in a few days. But this wasn't regular flu. The men who came in that first week, strong, healthy young soldiers in their 20s, they'd be dead within 48 hours. Their faces would turn blue from lack of oxygen. They'd cough up blood. Their lungs would fill with fluid until they literally drowned. Dr. Williamson, our head physician, he pulled me aside after the third death. "Margaret," he said, and his voice was shaking, "I've been practicing medicine for 20 years. I've never seen anything like this." Neither had I, and it was just beginning. We had no idea that by the time it was over, this flu would kill more people than the entire war, that it would take more American soldiers than German bullets ever did. All we knew was that our hospital was about to become a nightmare that would make the battlefield look merciful by comparison. October 1918. That's when it truly hit us. The wards started filling up faster than we could process admissions. Men would come in walking, complaining of headaches and sore throats. By evening, they'd be delirious with fever. By morning, some of them were dead. We'd been equipped to handle war wounds, battlefield trauma. We had supplies for that, bandages, surgical equipment, morphine for pain. But this, we had nothing. No cure, no treatment that worked, just aspirin and prayer, and neither one seemed to do much good. The hospital had been designed for 200 patients. By mid-October, we had over 800 crammed into every available space. The overflow went into tents outside, but the autumn rains had started and those tents leaked. Sick men lying in the cold and damp, which only made everything worse. I was working 18-hour shifts, sometimes 20. We all were. There weren't enough nurses, weren't enough doctors, weren't enough of anything. The orderlies who'd been helping us started getting sick too. Then the doctors, then the nurses. Sarah Mitchell, we'd come over on the same ship together, had been roommates at nursing school. She came down with it on October 12th. I begged her to rest, to let me take her shift. She refused. "These boys need us," she said. Her fever spiked to 105 that night. She was dead by October 15th. 23 years old. The smell in those wards, it was worse than the gas gangrene cases we'd seen from the front. A mix of fever, sweat, blood, excrement, disinfectant, and death. We wore gauze masks that were supposed to protect us, but they didn't do much. The virus was invisible, unstoppable. The sounds were worse than the smell. Men crying for their mothers. The wet, horrible coughing that produced pink, frothy sputum. The gasping. God, the gasping, as their lungs filled with fluid and they struggled for every breath. Some of them would tear at their shirts, clawing at their chests as if they could somehow pull the air in by force. We'd triage them as they came in. The ones turning blue went to the critical ward. The ones who still had color got sent to the regular flu ward, but the critical ward kept filling up, and we kept running out of beds, so we'd just lay them on the floor, rows and rows of dying men on the floor. Private James Corrigan from Brooklyn, 19 years old, hadn't even made it to the front yet. He grabbed my hand during one of my rounds. His lips were already turning dusky. "Nurse," he whispered, "am I going to die?" I wanted to lie to him, wanted to give him hope. But I'd learned by then that lying didn't help anyone. "I don't know, sweetheart," I told him, "but I'm going to stay right here with you." He died 4 hours later. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. I couldn't stay with all of them. There were too many. That's what haunts me most. All the boys who died alone because I was with someone else. The worst part wasn't the dying, it was the speed of it. You'd see a soldier at breakfast, healthy and laughing with his buddies. By lunch, he'd be in the infirmary with a fever. By dinner, he'd be fighting for his life. By the next morning, we'd be wrapping his body in a sheet and adding him to the pile outside the morgue. The morgue couldn't keep up. Bodies were stacking up faster than they could be processed. We had to store them in a warehouse behind the hospital because there was nowhere else to put them. The smell, even with all the lime we poured, you could smell death from 100 yards away. We stopped writing individual death certificates after a while. There wasn't time, just lists. Names and serial numbers and influenza pneumonia, written over and over until the words lost all meaning. The autopsies showed lungs that looked like they'd been through a gas attack, filled with bloody fluid, tissue destroyed. Dr. Williamson showed me the results once. I wish he hadn't. These were young men. Their lungs should have been pink and healthy. Instead, they looked like raw meat. Some of the men bled from their noses and ears as the virus attacked their bodies. Their faces would turn such a dark purple-blue from lack of oxygen that you couldn't tell a white soldier from a Negro soldier. Death was the great equalizer. It didn't care about rank or race or how brave you'd been in battle. We had soldiers who'd survived Belleau Wood, Château-Thierry, the Argonne, men with Purple Hearts and medals for valor. The flu killed them just as dead as it killed the clerks who'd never seen combat. That's what made it so cruel. These men had survived German machine guns and artillery barrages. They'd lived through hell, and then a virus, something you couldn't see, couldn't fight, couldn't shoot, took them down in their hospital beds. Private Thomas Dennison, I'll never forget him. He'd lost his right arm at Soissons, came to us for recovery from that wound, which was healing nicely. Then he caught the flu. I watched this tough combat veteran, this man who'd faced death on the battlefield without flinching, cry like a child as he struggled to breathe. "I didn't come all this way to die like this," he sobbed. "Not like this." But that's exactly what happened. He died on October 23rd, 3 days before the armistice talks began. The other nurses started breaking. You could see it in their eyes, that hollow, haunted look. We were all running on fumes and fear. Every cough made you wonder if you were next. Every headache could be the start. Some nurses refused to work the flu wards anymore, just refused. I couldn't blame them. I got sick myself in late October, woke up one morning with a pounding headache and chills, thought, this is it, this is how I die, reported to the nurses' quarantine ward and lay there for 3 days in a fever, having nightmares about all the faces of the men I'd watched die. Sarah's face, Private Corrigan's face, all of them. But I lived. My fever broke on the 4th day. Some of us were lucky like that. We got sick, but we survived. There was no rhyme or reason to it, no pattern we could find. The healthiest, strongest men would die while the weak ones pulled through. It was random, arbitrary, cruel. When I came back to work a week later, half the staff I'd known was gone, dead or too sick to work. We had new nurses, fresh arrivals who hadn't seen what we'd seen yet. They still had hope in their eyes. Give them a week, I thought. That hope won't last. November came, and with it, rumors of an armistice. The war was ending, Germany was beaten, the boys were coming home. But the flu didn't care about armistices. The wards stayed full. Men kept dying. We kept working. The only difference was now we had soldiers who'd survived the entire war only to die days before peace was declared. That felt especially cruel, making it through 4 years of hell just to be killed by a virus at the finish line. The armistice was signed on November 11th. We heard the celebrations in the distance, cheering, singing, church bells. In our hospital, we had 73 men die that day. 73. While the world celebrated peace, we were still counting bodies. I stopped feeling much of anything around then. You had to. If you let yourself feel every death, every loss, you'd go insane. So you built walls, became mechanical, take temperature, administer medicine, comfort the dying, close their eyes, move to the next bed, repeat, over and over until your shift ended and you collapsed in your quarters for a few hours before doing it all again. We developed routines to cope. Nurse Williams would hum hymns while she worked, said it kept her sane. Nurse Patterson wrote letters to the families, dozens of them. Your son died bravely. He didn't suffer. He spoke of you at the end. Most of it was lies, but kind lies. The families needed to believe their boys hadn't died, gasping and terrified and alone. I stopped writing letters after a while. Couldn't find the words anymore. The second wave started tapering off in late November, early December. Fewer new cases. The men who were sick either recovered or died, and gradually the wards started to empty. Not because we'd beaten it, we hadn't done anything except watch helplessly, but because it had simply burned through the population. We lost over 200 men in our hospital alone, 200 soldiers who survived German bullets only to be killed by a virus, and we were just one hospital. There were dozens of others along the front, all with similar death tolls. Back home in America, it was worse. Entire cities shut down. People wore masks in public. Funeral homes ran out of coffins. The exact numbers are hard to know, but estimates say anywhere from 50 to 100 million people died worldwide, more than the entire war. The war everyone said was the war to end all wars, the great catastrophe of our generation. It killed maybe 17 million people over 4 years. The flu killed more than that in less than 2 years. Some estimates say it killed that many in just a few months. But nobody wanted to talk about it. Not then, not after. Everyone wanted to celebrate victory, talk about the brave soldiers, remember the glorious sacrifice. Nobody wanted to remember the plague that killed more of our boys than the Germans ever did. My breaking point came on December 3rd, 1918. We had a young soldier named Michael O'Brien, Irish kid from South Boston, same neighborhood where I'd grown up, actually. He was 20 years old, had bright red hair and freckles and this infectious laugh that could light up a room. He'd been wounded at the Meuse-Argonne offensive, took shrapnel in his leg, but he was recovering well. We'd joke around during my rounds. He'd tell me about his girl back home, Mary Catherine, how he was going to marry her as soon as he got discharged. Showed me her picture. She was pretty, dark hair, sweet smile. I'm going to take her dancing first thing, he told me. Soon as I can walk without this damn crutch. Then I'm going to ask her father for permission. Do it all proper like. He caught the flu on December 1st. By December 2nd, his lips were turning blue. His lungs were filling up. I knew the pattern by then, knew what was coming. I sat with him that night when I should have been sleeping, held his hand. He was delirious, talking to people who weren't there, calling for his mother, calling for Mary Catherine. I can see her, he whispered at one point. She's so beautiful in her white dress. He thought he was at his wedding. In his mind, he'd made it home. He was marrying his girl. I didn't correct him. He died just after dawn on December 3rd, still holding my hand, still smiling, probably dreaming about that wedding he'd never have. I went outside after, behind the hospital where no one could see me, and I broke, just fell apart, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe, screaming at God, at the world, at the unfairness of it all. This boy had survived the war. He was going home. He was going to get married and have children and live a normal life. And a goddamn virus took it all away. I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't watch one more young man die. Couldn't hold one more hand as the light went out. Couldn't write one more letter telling a mother her son was dead. Couldn't maintain the professional distance, the emotional walls, the mechanical routine. I just couldn't. Dr. Williamson found me there, didn't say anything, just sat down next to me in the mud and let me cry. When I finally stopped, he said, "Margaret, you need to go home. You've done enough." There are still patients. There will always be patients, he said quietly. But if you don't leave now, you'll never recover from this. Trust me, I've seen it happen. He was right. I'd seen it too. Nurses who'd worked through the worst of it, who'd pushed too hard, stayed too long. They were shells of people now, hollow, broken. I didn't want to become that. I put in for discharge the next day. By mid-December, I was on a ship heading back to Boston. I should have felt relieved, grateful to be going home. Instead, I felt like a deserter, like I was abandoning my post, abandoning all those boys who were still sick, still dying. That guilt never went away. It's 1961 now. I'm 67 years old, retired from nursing 15 years ago. People ask me sometimes about my service, about the war. They want to hear stories about bravery and heroism and the noble sacrifice of our fighting men. I tell them sanitized versions. Leave out the worst parts, the drowning, the blood, the speed of the dying, the bodies stacked outside the morgue, Michael O'Brien dreaming about his wedding as he suffocated. I don't tell them that I still can't go to hospitals. The smell, that particular combination of disinfectant and sickness, it brings it all back. I had a granddaughter born last year. Couldn't go see her in the hospital. Had to wait until my daughter brought her home. I don't tell them about the nightmares, how I still see their faces sometimes. Private Corrigan, Sarah Mitchell, Michael O'Brien, hundreds of others whose names I've forgotten, but whose faces remain burned into my memory. After I came home in December 1918, I tried to go back to nursing. Got a position at Massachusetts General Hospital. Lasted 3 months before I had a breakdown in the middle of a shift. A patient came in with pneumonia, just regular pneumonia, and I couldn't function, just froze. Stood there shaking until another nurse led me away. I didn't work for 2 years after that. Eventually I went back, had to, needed the income, needed the purpose, but I never worked in infectious disease again, couldn't. Specialized in maternity instead. Bringing life into the world instead of watching death take it away. That helped, somewhat. The flu pandemic, they called it the Spanish flu, though it didn't start in Spain, it just disappeared from public memory. Everyone wanted to forget. The war had ended. We'd won. Time to celebrate and rebuild and move forward. Nobody wanted to dwell on the plague that had killed millions. History books focus on the battles, the trenches, the armistice. They mention the flu pandemic in a paragraph or two, if at all, like it was a footnote, a minor detail, but it wasn't minor, it was catastrophic. More American soldiers died from that flu than died in combat. Think about that. All the battles, all the machine guns and artillery and gas attacks. The flu killed more of our boys than all of that combined. And we couldn't do anything about it. That's what haunts me most. In battle, at least soldiers can fight back, can shoot, can take cover, can try to survive. But against the flu, we were helpless. All our medical training, all our knowledge and equipment and determination, none of it mattered. We just watched them die. I never married, never had children of my own. Spent my life taking care of other people's children instead. Maybe that was my way of coping, of trying to balance the scales somehow. For every life I couldn't save in 1918, maybe I could help bring a new one into the world. It doesn't balance, of course. Nothing can balance what we lost. Sometimes I wonder about the families. Michael O'Brien's Mary Catherine. Did she ever find out he'd been dreaming of her at the end? Did it bring her comfort or make it worse? Private Corrigan's mother in Brooklyn. Did she understand that her son didn't die alone, that I was holding his hand? I wrote letters to some of them after I got home, tried to give them closure. Most never wrote back. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe it hurt too much. The world has moved on. We've had another war since then. World War II, they call it now, since apparently the first one wasn't actually the war to end all wars. We've had Korea. We've got this situation in Vietnam heating up. But 1918 stays with me, always will. People talk about the greatest generation now, the boys who fought in World War II. They were heroes, no question. But the generation before them, my generation, we fought two enemies, the Germans and the flu. One we could see, one we couldn't. And the invisible one was deadlier. I've lived 43 years since the pandemic, built a life, have nieces and nephews and grandnieces and grandnephews, have friends, have a small apartment in Cambridge, have routines and hobbies and a church community. But I never fully came home from France. Part of me is still in that hospital, still making rounds, still holding hands, still watching young men die while I stand by helplessly, still hearing that terrible wet rattling of lungs filled with fluid, still smelling death and disinfectant, still wondering if I could have done more. The answer is no, of course. We did everything we could with what we had. It wasn't enough, but it was all we had. But knowing that doesn't help. Not really. They gave us medals, the Victory Medal with service bars, certificates of appreciation. Years later, there was a memorial dedicated to nurses who'd served. My name is on it somewhere. I've never gone to see it because we didn't win. Not against the flu. It just stopped, burned itself out after killing 50 million people, maybe more. We didn't defeat it. We survived it. There's a difference. And survival isn't the same as victory. The boys in the trenches, they knew what they were fighting, could see it, could name it, could hate it. We were fighting ghosts, invisible killers that could be anywhere, could strike anyone, could take you down in hours. And the ghosts won. They always do.